There he is, the voice of the Tigers, Andy. Hey, thank you so much for taking the time this morning.
My pleasure. My pleasure to be with you today, guys.
Oh, we are looking forward to having you in Waco, Texas now, just a couple weeks from today. I mean, less than a couple weeks. I have a question for you before we start. This is a fun one, okay? Because you've been doing this since 95. I know you started doing baseball for Auburn in 95, but you have been part of the Tigers team broadcasting-wise since 95, I'm sorry. And you're from Illinois, correct?
I am.
So you got a little – are you a Chicago Bears guy?
No, I grew up near St. Louis.
Okay. But
I am nothing Chicago.
All right, nothing – then this could really hurt you staying impartial with this. So we all remember Bo Jackson, obviously, 85 Heisman Trophy winner with Auburn, one of the best football players, college football players, certainly of all time.
40 years ago this season.
Yes. Now we're feeling old, right? Now we're really feeling old. But, okay, a couple seasons after that in the NFL, we saw Bo Jackson run by Brian Bosworth over at the Kingdome on Monday Night Football. People still talk about it. Now, let's pretend that is Baylor's Mike Singletary of the Chicago Bears in his prime. So we got Bo and we got Mike Singletary going head-to-head. Who wins that battle on the goal line? I ask you.
It's hard for me not to say that Bo wins that battle, but I'm not going to try and undercut Mike Singletary because I think he was a much better linebacker than Brian Bosworth. So I think it would have been tougher for Bo, but listen, I'd love to have seen that, quite frankly. I'd love to have seen that matchup because, I mean, we're talking about two of the all-time greats from these schools in Bo Jackson and Mike Singletary. And I was in Illinois when the Bears won the Super Bowl. Matter of fact, the radio station I was working for was a Bears and a Cubs affiliate. Wow. And so it's hard for me. It's hard to say that Bears defense isn't one of the greats of all time. And of course it was anchored in the middle by Mike Singletary.
Yeah. I mean, I like what you said there. Boy, we would love to see that. Some we will get to see is Friday night, August 29th. Auburn in town. The Tigers right now, a 2.5-point favorite on the road against Baylor. That to me, I'm like, wow. You know, I'm like, is there SEC bias? You know, here I am, a Big 12 guy. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a heck of a matchup. Where is Auburn going into this game expectation-wise? You know, is this the type of game that will serve as the litmus test as to where we are before we go into the SEC conference? Or is this a game that, hey, we need to win this, not only for our, college football playoff hopes, but for our fan base?
I think it's the latter. This is Auburn's first true road game to open a season since opening at USC in 2002.
Wow.
Now, Auburn has played several openers in neutral site games, and the last being in 2019 when Auburn went to Arlington and beat Oregon. But Auburn has not played a true road game to open the season since 2002 at USC. So this is uncharted territory for everybody involved in this. But I think this is a very important game for Auburn. After the 29th against Baylor, Auburn comes home to face Ball State and then South Alabama. And then from game 4 until mid-November, it's nothing but the Southeastern Conference for Auburn. And it opened, that stretch of play opens with back-to-back road games at Oklahoma, which is expected to be much better than it was a year ago, and Texas A&M. And that team is expected to be better than it was a year ago. Auburn then has an off date, and then Georgia comes to town. Both Georgia and Alabama play at Auburn this season. I think, and this is me, I think that opening game, as far as momentum, as far as confidence is concerned, that opener against Baylor is very, very important for this Auburn team. Auburn was disappointed in year 2 under Hugh Freeze. And I think the expectations going into last year were very, very high, and it just didn't happen. Auburn lost some really close games to Cal and Arkansas and Oklahoma and Vanderbilt and Missouri. And Auburn wins 2 or 3 of those games, and the outlook going into this season is vastly different than it is right now. So with all that said, I think this opener at Baylor is very, very important.
In the eye of the storm for Auburn is going to be Jackson Arnold. That's why I love talking to guys like you, because of your wealth of experience, but also your proximity to the program right now, what kind of progress has Jackson Arnold made this offseason?
Well, Jackson was here for spring ball, and that's very, very important, I think, for Auburn. And I thought he had a good spring. He's had a very good fall camp for Auburn. And listen, I mean, he's trying to restart his career after a disappointing time at Oklahoma. And you can talk about all the reasons that it did not go well for him at Oklahoma and why he is at Auburn right now. But he has all the tools needed. And in the first month and a game for Jackson Arnold, considering what he has, he returns to his home state for the opener against Baylor, right? Because he's from Denton. He goes on the road to Oklahoma, where he transferred from, and then he's back in his home state again at Texas A&M. So there is a great deal of proving ground for Jackson Arnold before Auburn gets to its open date. And then, oh, by the way, Georgia comes a-calling in early October.
It's emotional, too, for a young man. I would imagine that would be a roller coaster. Now, you're talking about a quarterback of his makeup, so it's nothing he can't handle. But that will be an interesting stretch of time for him, I would have to imagine.
No question, and I can't imagine what that's going to be like for him. I mean, the emotion that goes into playing 2 games in your home state, and the one game you're not playing in your home state on the road, you're going back to the school that you left to come to Auburn. One thing about Jackson Arnold in this season is the wide receiver room that he is throwing to right now, with the likes of Cam Coleman and Bryce Kane and Horatio Fields and Malcolm Simmons and Perry Thompson, and then Eric Singleton, who transferred in from Georgia Tech. This is as good a wide receiver room as Auburn has had, I believe, as far as depth is concerned, the deep threat, team speed out of the slot, maybe since 2004 when Auburn went undefeated with the likes of Ben Obamanu and Devin Aroma-Shadu and Courtney Taylor and Anthony Mix. I believe this wide receiver room is that talented and maybe even a little bit deeper than it was on that 04 team that went undefeated at Auburn.
If Auburn is to recapture, some of the magic that we saw in 21 years ago in 2004, if they're going to surprise people this year in the SEC, why would they surprise people? What's going to be the biggest reason?
Well, if Auburn's successful, it's going to surprise people because very few are giving Auburn an opportunity to take the step forward that this team is looking for. So if Auburn wins this year and wins at the rate that it needs to, I think it will surprise many. I think this. A year ago, Peyton Thorne had this wide receiver room, albeit many of them were freshmen that played for Auburn. But Auburn was banged up, and Auburn just wasn't very good on the offensive line a year ago. Auburn has talent up front for Auburn. And I think that's one of the big differences. I think this is Auburn's best offensive line in a number of years. And frankly, it needs to be because it was an area that was lacking for the Tigers in years past. But the middle three of Connor Lew, Dylan Wade, and Jeremiah Wright are all veterans. They're all back. That's your 2 guards and a center. And then Auburn went to the transfer portal for its tackles. Mason Murphy from USC on the right side, and the blind side guy, Xavier Chaplin, who transferred in from Virginia Tech. Those guys need to play at the level that we believe that they have the talent for up front. From an offensive standpoint, I think it all starts, and this is not earth-shattering news here, but it all starts for Auburn up front. Those guys have to produce. Those guys have to give Jackson Arnold time to throw the football and open up the holes to Auburn's run game this season.
It's always scary for an opponent when you hear, hey, what's the strength of the team you're going to play? What's their strength? When somebody says up front, offensive line, that's scary, man. I mean, that's a great sign for Auburn, because you can talk about the bells and whistles all you want, the wide receivers and how sexy that room has gotten. But if you can't move guys around up front, right, then you're not going to win. So that's huge. I want to ask you about Hugh Freeze. You mentioned third year for the Hugh Freeze era. What kind of fingerprints of his now are on this program? Year 3 is big year for culture. All that stuff is supposed to be settled in, right? Even with the turnover now in college football. Where are his fingerprints on this team and this program right now?
Well, it starts with the recruiting because they've had 2 top 10 recruiting classes coming into this season. And they brought in guys like Cam Coleman and Bryce Kane and Malcolm Simmons and Perry Thompson, just let alone from that wide receiver room. Auburn has, done very, very well from a recruiting standpoint in the 2 years. And those guys are now playing very important minutes for Auburn. So I would say first and foremost, it's the recruiting for this Auburn team. In the midst of NIL, which seems to change daily, the rules and all the regulations that go into that. I do think he has beefed up the offensive line, one, and he has drastically beefed up that wide receiver room, too, from an offensive standpoint. And that is, especially that wide receiver room, is what he has been known for, among things, in his years at Liberty, in his years at Ole Miss. So that's where I think first and foremost for this Auburn team. But listen, the expectations, as I mentioned, going into year number 2 last year, were at an all-time high, I think, for Auburn. And it turned into a disappointing season. So I think there is still a little bit of a wait and see what this Auburn ball club is going to do. I believe that Auburn's talent level is the best that it's been in his 3 years at Auburn. But I thought last year's talent level was the best that we've seen in years, and it did not produce. Auburn has to be able to produce, and it all starts on the 29th in Waco, Texas.
Couple more for you. Andy Burcham, voice of the Tigers, Talking Tigers podcast. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. We know Hugh Freeze can recruit, right? And you just illustrated that, really supported that. Has there been a pretty cool recruiting story that you have heard so far since Hugh Freeze has been at Auburn?
I don't know if it's a Hugh Freeze recruiting story. It's an Auburn recruiting story. Was talking with the general manager of recruiting at Auburn for an upcoming podcast, the Talking Tigers podcast, Kenyatta Watson. And we were talking about getting kids on campus, getting student athletes, regardless of football, basketball, baseball, women's basketball, so it doesn't matter. Get them on this campus. And that's a story that you hear over and over, including Hugh Freeze and back to Tommy Tuberville and Coach Pat Dye. I mean, talking about two of the legends at Auburn. But he really brought up a very interesting fact. He said, if we can get kids on campus, student athletes, young men, however you want to call them, if we can get them here 3 times, watch out. And he's talking about a summer camp. He's talking about an official visit. He's talking about games here. If they can get them here 3 times, they feel like they have a legitimate shot to land anybody. And Auburn has turned some big name players in the past under Hugh Freeze. There's a graphic a lot of times that will go out from Hugh Freeze's first few months on campus when Auburn is able to get a commitment, and it's the Auburn fans know, but it is one of those, and may have been one of the very first. It may have been DeMarcus Riddick, one of Auburn's inside linebackers. When Auburn flipped DeMarcus Riddick, just Hugh Freeze's genuine reaction, and that was recorded, and now you see that over and over. So that's one of those. But listen, I'm sure it's the same way in Waco. I'm sure it's the same way in Lawrence, Kansas. You get kids on this campus and you show them the Auburn campus, and you show them the family that is here at Auburn. I do think that is a legitimate selling point, at least here on the Plains. So you were on the call in that Iron Bowl, right? The historic one where that was not me. No, that was Rod Bramblett, the legendary Rod Bramblett. So Rod Bramblett was on that call. You were working with the broadcast team, correct? At that time. Yes. So during that game, was that the most special moment for you at Jordan-Hare? Well, and here I've got to be honest with you because I wasn't there. I did women's basketball at Auburn for 31 years. Yeah. And they were playing a tournament in Las Vegas. Okay. Because it was Thanksgiving weekend, right? It was Thanksgiving weekend. We were in Las Vegas. We were getting ready to play, I believe, Iowa State at a casino rodeo arena is what it was. And I'm watching the game. My wife is flying back from Vegas to Auburn on a flight, and I'm able to text her what's going on because she didn't have TVs on the plane back in 2013. And I'm texting her, and there's an Alabama fan, as it turns out, sitting to her right. She was on the window, and he's kind of trying to look over her shoulder because there's no TVs. And when I told her what had happened, and then, of course, later heard Rod's legendary call, it's one of the greatest, if not the greatest call in the greatest finish in sports history, in my opinion. She turned to the Alabama fan sitting to her right and said, "Do you want to know?" And he said, "They ran back the field goal, didn't they?" And she said, "Yes." And he just put his hands down on his tray. And she didn't even try to provide solace for him at that point. But it's one of the great plays ever, period. And Rod's call is impeccable of that game. And remember, it was 2 weeks after the prayer at Jordan-Hare, the tipped ball against Georgia.
Yes.
So Rod has two of the iconic calls in Auburn history in a 2-week span at Jordan-Hare Stadium.
It's such a cool story, and I appreciate you providing context on that, and being so humble when you share that story. One more question for you. What are you most excited for? For this Auburn Tigers team this season?
Well, I'm excited about the potential of this offense. I'm also excited to see how this secondary especially responds this year. I mean, a year ago, Auburn played a lot of freshmen. They had to because of injuries. They had to because they were, frankly, the best players that they had in the secondary. And freshmen and sophomores that played a year ago, very important minutes for Auburn, are now sophomores and juniors. And I think they're poised to take a huge step forward. And they're going to get an enormous test in game one. I mean, an offense that features Ashton Hawkins and Kobe Prentice, and all those transfers in for Baylor. And then you've got a quarterback that's back. I mean, a guy that threw for 3,000 yards a year ago with 28 touchdowns, only 8 interceptions in Sawyer Robertson. So how does this secondary react to the aerial attack of Baylor? And what does Auburn's offense do against a Baylor defense that I love the inside linebackers for Baylor. So there are so many question marks going into this game. And I am thrilled that I'll be able to be there in Waco and call that game on a Friday night. Auburn doesn't play Friday night football games. So this will be our first I can't remember Auburn playing a Friday night game unless it was a bowl game in December or January.
Oh, hey, one more for you. How overblown was that golfing stuff with Coach Freeze? Like, that to me was such a product of. Well, I just want to hear your take on that. Nobody cares.
Well, I mean, he likes to play golf. He's a really good golfer, by the way.
Yeah, that's what I felt like, Andy. They're penalizing for being good at golf.
Right. You walk into his office and he's got some trophies.
Yeah.
Back there on his office, but yeah, I think it was blown out of proportion. He likes to play golf. That's the time of the year he gets to play golf. He's going to play golf. I think it was also in a time where Auburn wasn't exactly landing recruits at that point. Matter of fact, lost a couple recruits during that time. So I think it all just kind of built to a crescendo. But that's what Hugh does. Hugh likes to play golf. He likes to play golf with his wife. He gets to spend quality time with his wife on the golf course. Now, I'd be surprised if he's out there playing today. Matter of fact, he isn't. They're practicing right now. So I might be a little more concerned if he were playing golf all the time. But when is he going to play golf?
Yeah. No, that's,
you know what I'm
saying? Dude, I know what you're saying. I love that answer. And I appreciate your time. Andy Burcham, I got a game Thursday night at Houston before the Baylor game. So I'm going to run up and say hey to you that Friday night if I get a chance. I cannot wait for this game, and we look forward to having you in Waco. Well,
I look forward to it. I've already been in contact with John Morris about the and I've known him for quite some time.
Yeah,
as a matter of fact. But looking forward, I have been to Waco twice before, both with women's basketball in the postseason. Okay. I look forward to seeing the relatively new stadium. Auburn fans are pumped about coming to Waco for a number of reasons. First and foremost, this game on a Friday night. But I look forward to meeting you, Pete, in person. I appreciate your time today.
All right, Andy. Thank you so much, man. Take care. Safe travels.
My pleasure. Take care.